there, welcome to Bitesize Piano. In this video I'm going to give you 5 general tips and advice to help you if you have smaller or weaker hands to be able to make some adaptations on the piano so that you can still play and enjoy your favourite pieces of music. And I received so many comments on my channel from you guys who have smaller hands or weaker hands or whatever your hand situation is, saying that you can't play the thing that I am teaching and asking for advice on how to adapt it to suit you. So we're generally going to be speaking about chords because obviously it's usually an issue when you're having to play more than a few notes at a time that are often quite far apart from each other. With each tip I'm going to give you a different chord, a different situation, and how you could work your way around it to suit your hands. So let's go to the piano and we'll dive in. So the first thing that you could try is splitting the chord, and you may be utilising the sustain pedal if you have one to blend the chord together. So my hand span can barely span the interval of a tenth, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, but not really reliably, that comfortably. I'm more comfortable with a ninth and playing notes with my other fingers between that interval. And then in my right hand I'm going to add an A as the ninth, so I'm going to play G, B, D, A. Again, this is just a random example, nothing from anything specific, so I can barely just do that myself. So instead, what you could try, again it depends how long the chord needs to be held down for, and the rhythm and the timing. So if it's quick, that's going to be trickier to separate the notes from lowest to highest, like this. When splitting a chord, once you can play it sort of evenly slower, and then you can gradually make this chord quicker. And then it becomes more rapid, and it can actually sound really beautiful, particularly with that type of chord, an add 9 chord. It can add an interesting flourish if the music's saying to play all of those notes at the same time, and if you add a little flourish, and then that can add quite a pretty element to the piece anyway. So often I find that I have to split chords even for myself. This is someone who has a bigger hand span than average. I still have to adapt with splitting chords as well. So the second one is see where you can divide the notes differently between the hands. If we take, again, just a different chord, so say the music is in your left hand is telling you to play an A, a C, an E, and a C sharp. There's no way that I can reach that. There are some people who can, I cannot. Say the right hand is playing these notes, so an E, a G, and a B. If the music is notating, if you're reading sheet music, that the C sharp is to be played with the left hand, what you could try instead, if your other hand has room to expand, you could instead play that C sharp with the right hand instead. So then we have this. So sometimes if a piece of music hasn't been edited properly, or whoever has arranged it hasn't thought to actually play the arrangement themselves to check that everything is playable and readable and makes sense, and then you may find that if your right hand or your left hand has room to stretch to a note that it's saying that your other hand should be playing, and then swap. See where if your right hand can help your left hand, and if your left hand can help your right hand. So again, instead of playing that chord like this, I'd have to split it like we did in the first point, because there's no other way I could play that with my left hand. Instead, so we could play the chord, the harmony notes all together at the same time. So this is an A9 chord if you're interested. And then we can just play it like this instead. Makes that a lot easier. And again, it depends what comes before it and comes after it as well. So remember, these are just general tips and advice. So the third point then is to remove repeated notes. So notes that you can remove that aren't going to compromise the overall harmony. So for example, so if we take Je te laisserai demain, which I have a whole tutorial on, I get many comments on this video saying that they can't stretch the hand span, and that does have a slightly more demanding section for if you're more a beginner or you're not used to having stretchier hand positions, or if your hands are just smaller. So we have this, which is a seventh, which most people can stretch, I would say, but then it goes to here. So where you have an octave, if you can't stretch octaves, particularly octaves with being able to play notes in between, and then you are going to have to change that if that's a strain. So if we look at this chord with the octave stretch, we have two A's in there. We also have an A when the left hand comes in as well. So we have three A's, which aren't entirely necessary. Obviously it makes the chord sound more full and has more depth, but if we take out one of those A's, is it really going to massively affect the harmony or the sound? Not really. Like this. So compared to this very, very little difference in the actual effects and the sound. So taking out duplicate notes where the harmony isn't being compromised is probably one of the main things that I do to help students who have weaker or smaller hands. So you have to look to see where there are duplicate notes and then play with a more closed hand position instead of like that. Another thing as well, if the left hand has octaves, and again you can't quite stretch an octave, you could resort to playing in fifths instead. So it's another like neutral sound or chord, and it adds more depth like an octave does, that's easier to play but won't disrupt the harmony. So fourths and fifths and octaves are very neutral chords. They're neither major nor minor, so you could play in intervals of fifths in your left hand if you wanted more depth rather than just playing a single note, and you're not compromising the harmony, and it's making it sound just a bit more beefy, for lack of a better description. So for example, instead of playing like this chord, which is an E major chord, you could play, some might prefer the sound of it, like that. So this takes me on to the next point. So if the chord already has different notes in it, so every note is different, there are no duplicate notes like we had in the last example, we had three A's. If there are no duplicate octave notes, there's no way to remove a note without really compromising the harmony, and then you're gonna have to maybe look at how you can voice the chord differently or play those notes in a different order. So this chord here, which is an interesting chord. So again, I'd have to split it, particularly with my right hand, and we have no duplicate notes. So we have C, E, D, G, B flat, then an A at the very top. I can't really comfortably or reliably play that right hand part there. So what we're going to have to do is take those notes and maybe rejig them a little bit so that the harmony isn't massively compromised. Obviously it will sound different if we change the order of some of the notes. So this is basically like a C13 chord here. So we have this A is the issue. So I think this A needs to stay as the highest note, and the C as a bass note definitely needs to stay as the lowest note. So I don't think we can change these. We need to swap around the E, the D, the G, and the B flat. So these notes here. What we could try is I could play the B flat and I could play the D here instead. And in the left hand, I could play just the C and the E, and then I could play the G in the left hand as well. So we've gone from this, again I can't play it all at the same time, to this. So it's not wildly different, again, because we've kept the lowest notes and the highest note there. We've not changed the voicing of those two notes. We've just played around with the middle notes a little bit. Much easier to play, and still sounds, we're not compromising the harmony, it's still a C13 chord. The final point, the fifth point, is to, if the situation arises where you have two notes together, is to use your thumb to bar, we call it bar the notes. For example, if we have this chord, instead of playing, having your hand in a very awkward, weird shape, that is much, much more manageable. This will only apply if you have a chord that has two notes there, or it could be something like you could bar like that. So I'm barring these two black keys. So using your thumb to bar two notes could be a possibility if the chord has two notes that are next to each other. So I hope you found that useful, and hope you've taken notes of these tips and advice so you know what to look out for in the future if you're presented with something where you just think, oh my gosh, how am I going to play that? So I hope you're well, and I will see you in the next video. So that's the end of this video. If you would like to leave a request, leave them in the comments section below of this video. I've also left some videos here that I think you might like, so go and check those out as well. I also have a course. Visit bitesizepianocourse.co.uk and you can enroll and start learning how to read music. I'll see you in the next video.